you know, sometimes you make notes and sometimes you just kind of toss them aside. And listening to the debate today that's gone on, it's been very important, it's been very informative. But over the past several days, weeks, there's been a lot of work, a lot of talk, a lot of things that have happened. And I keep going back to what I consider the epic failure of the conference committee on House Bill 107 that actually would have generated some revenue, pretty much our only opportunity to raise revenue. So that's not there, and all the things that are lost for the veterans, for the Social Security recipients, for the personal income tax lost. And I keep going back to faced with two choices that I don't really like either one of them. I guess I have to say at the end of the day, I like the House version better than what the Senate did, but I still don't really like it. But I go back to, and I know there's people in here that grew up during the Cold War, like I did, and went through duck and cover drills in school. And I think at that time in my life was the only time that I've really became aware of things outside of just the comfort of my home. But I learned a term, and I hope I get it right, and probably from the gentleman from the 60th, if I'm not correct, I'm sure he'll correct me. But there was something that supposedly kept us safe over the years between the Soviet Union and this country was MAD, mutually assured destruction. Well, that's different than what we're talking about now, but make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, we're just in a situation of mutually assured destruction with higher ed, with our budget, with the failure to even go to 25 cents on the $100 or 50 cents on the $100, like there's no tomorrow that next year is not going to come, which, by the way, we'll be back here in about 7 months. Mutually assured destruction, that you have two bad choices, that whoever hits the button first and then somebody else retaliates, and they're all bad. They're all bad. Why in heaven's name would anybody looking at the outside of this state, looking in at what we're trying to do to higher ed, even with the modest cuts that are here versus the Senate's, we act like 2%'s a victory. And if this goes to conference, does anybody believe that the Senate's going to agree to 2%? That's why it's a conference. We couldn't even come to an agreement on a revenue bill. I'm frustrated. I am tired. I am tired of, this is not a political thing. This is not us versus Senate versus the governor. Is anybody talking to their constituents back home? Is anybody hearing from them? I am. My wife is every time she goes to the grocery store. She's in Clarksburg today, and believe me, she's hearing from a lot of our constituents by virtue of being married to a legislator. We are making a terrible, terrible mistake. Base broadening, folks, wake up, it was a tax increase. You can call it what you want, it's a tax increase. 6.5%, 6% tax increase. I'm disappointed that the previous amendment did not pass, but I don't want to let it go without saying that our smaller schools and our community and technical colleges are every bit as important to this state as WVU and Marshall. They may not have the political clout, but in their own regions, they have every bit as much importance and economic impact regionally. So let's not forget that. At the end of the day, I'm going to vote for this bill coming out, or plugging in our House version to go to the Senate. We'll see what happens. There's probably people across the hall and downstairs that probably don't like that. But it's probably in my opinion, it's at this point to give some assurance to state employees. Just while we were here, I've received a number of emails and texts from people. They're scared to death. They want to know who to call, who to call about their mortgage payment if the government shuts down. And Mr. Speaker, I hope you don't mind, but I've just been referring people 340-3210, your number, Mitch Carmichael's number, and 558-2000 downstairs, because I don't know what else to do. But I know one thing: if we continue on this path of fantasy that next year's not going to come, and it's not going to be worse, and higher ed cuts aren't going to be worse, and education cuts aren't going to be worse, and the roads are going to continue to deteriorate, we are truly on a path of mutually assured destruction, and our kids won't stay here, our grandkids won't stay here, and it's just going to be a matter of who turns out the lights. So with that ringing endorsement of this of this plan out of the House, it's at this point the best of all bad options until we can wake up, face facts, do what our constituents elected us to do, and lead. And I would just say, it's time for everybody to take their political hats off and start lacing up some statesmanship and stateswomanship armor to do what we need to do what's right and proper for our citizens, not what's politically expedient to run on the next election. I just, Mr. Speaker, I thank you for allowing me to vent, but I know on both sides of the aisle over the last few days, there are many people on both sides of this aisle that feel exactly like I do. And I just hope at some point enough of them will say enough's enough, and will face facts, and will face their responsibilities. So with that, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Thanks.